Hello and welcome back to the YouTube home of Peterpanlore and Peterpan Facts with me, your Peterpan hobbyist, enthusiast and journalist, using my Peterpan hobbyist, enthusiast and journalist brain and knowledge to bring you fun facts, lore and trivia, talk about the world of the Neverland, the story of Peter Pan, and answer you guys' questions. Today we are continuing on with the topic that I've talked about before, and a bunch of you asked me to do this with other characters, so much like I've done for Peter Pan, where I did a 120 years of costume history, and I dived into all the different Peter Pan costumes over the years, this time we're going to be doing the same thing again, and looking at another character. This time, we are looking at the character of Tinkerbell. But instead of making it a 12-month series, instead I am going to condense it down, much like Tinkerbell, into one small video. So grab yourself a beverage and maybe a snack. This might be a long one, as we dive into the costume history of the character Tinkerbell. And yes, Sergey is here too, resplendent in his pride bandana. He is all ready for June already. So there are three different things I'm going to be looking at while we explore these different costumes. The first one is how close it is to the original description of Tinkerbell. The second one is whether it fits in its adaptation. So even if it's not completely true to the original lore, does it still fit the world that it's in while giving the Tinkerbell vibe? And number three is overall, is it a good or interesting design? Again, even if it's completely different to the original Tinkerbell, is it at least interesting? So those are the three things we're going to be looking at, and let's start right at the beginning then with the original Tinkerbell. As a lot of you might hopefully know from spending any of your time on my content, and if you're brand new, welcome to Peterpanlore. We're over on TikTok as well, go and follow us over there. So as hopefully you might know, Peter Pan actually started its life as a stage play, and the character of Tinkerbell was first brought to life as a light. Essentially, she was the equivalent of shining your torch all over the place, a little beam of light that tinkles away all over the place, accompanied by the sound of bells. And that was Tinkerbell. But this kind of Tinkerbell is almost impossible to compare everyone else to, seeing as, you know, you'd be comparing actual costumed people to a ball of light. So instead, we're gonna jump forwards from 1904 and the stage play to 1911 and the novel that J.M. Barrie published, Peter and Wendy. This is the first description we get of Tinkerbell. It's from chapter 3, Come Away, Come Away. It was not really a light. It made this light by flashing about so quickly, but when it came to rest for a second, you saw it was a fairy, no longer than your hand, but still growing. It was a girl called Tinkerbell, exquisitely gowned in a skeleton leaf cut low and square, through which her figure could be seen to the best advantage. She was slightly inclined to embonpoint. A moment after the fairy's entrance, the window is blown open and Peter arrives. That is the first description we get of Tinkerbell. In the chapter, The Home Under the Ground, we hear this about Tinkerbell's living quarters. There was one recess in the wall no larger than a bird cage, which was the private apartment of Tinkerbell. It could be shut off from the rest of the home by a tiny curtain, which Tink, who was most fastidious, always kept drawn when dressing or undressing. No woman, however large, could have had a more exquisite boudoir and bedchamber combined. The couch, as she called it, was a genuine Queen Mab with club legs, and she varied the bedspreads according to what fruit blossom was in season. Her mirror was a Puss in Boots, of which there are only now 3, unchipped, known to the fairy dealers. The washstand was pie crust and reversible, the chest of drawers an authentic Charming VI, and the carpet and rugs of the best, the early, period of Marjorie and Robin. There was a chandelier from Tiddlywinks for the look of the thing, but of course she lit the residence herself. Tink was very contemptuous of the rest of the house, as indeed was perhaps inevitable, and her chamber, though beautiful, looked rather conceited, having the appearance of a nose permanently turned up. And that's it. That's all that we know about Tinkerbell's appearance and the boudoir that she resides in. From this, the description of her that we are going to be comparing to all the other costumes is she wore a skeleton leaf, it was exquisite, it was cut low and square, it showed off her figure beautifully, and she was a curvy girl, which I absolutely adore. So with that all being said, let's take a dive back in history then and start looking at some of these Tinkerbell costumes. The first Tinkerbell we're going to look at is from the 1924 film of Peter Pan. This time being played by Virginia Brown Fair, and looking absolutely exquisite, I have to say. I absolutely love how almost windswept this Tinkerbell looks. She has so much drapage to her, over her shoulders, down her arms. It looks absolutely glorious and very, very sumptuous and special. Interestingly, it says that Howard Greer was the costume designer, but that he was uncredited for it. If this is true, I'm very disappointed. Costume designers deserve a whole lot better than that. Question number 1 then, how does this Tinkerbell compare to the original? Well, in terms of being exquisite and just a little sumptuous, I do think that it tracks. It certainly reads as very fairy-like and very whimsical, but I have to say it doesn't read quite cheeky enough to be completely Tinkerbell for me. She still looks absolutely stunning, it's a beautiful outfit, but it's giving more Glinda from The Wizard of Oz, the old film, rather than the cheeky Tinkerbell, the sassy fairy. Nonetheless though, absolutely stunning look. Question number 2 is, how well does it fit within the adaptation itself? How well does it fit that world? And this one I'll have to give them major props for, because I do think it fits completely. It definitely fits within the world of their Neverland, and also because this film is black and white, you cannot play with color quite so much. Instead, you have to play with what will pop on screen as a sort of shade of black and white and gray. And I think that this costume really does that. It's got some sheer qualities to it, some sparkles, some gems, some sweeping skirts. So overall, I definitely think that it fits within the world they've created in this adaptation, even if it's not completely true to the original Tinkerbell. And question number 3, is it just a good design? Is it an interesting costume? I would have to say yes. Again, it doesn't completely scream Tinkerbell to me. While it definitely screams fairy, I feel like it screams more, well, Queen Mab or a Titania or something like this. I can definitely see it being used for a character like that, but if you're going to put her in a lineup of Tinkerbells, I do think she might get lost somewhere in the shuffle. But nonetheless, it is still a very beautiful costume. And now we move on to the 1950s and the Disney animated Tinkerbell, who, bless her heart, is responsible for quite a bit of discourse in my comment section sometimes. More on that in a minute. So question number 1 then, how does this Tinkerbell compare to the original? Well, something I can say for this one is it does appear like she's wearing a leaf, or leaves, or at least part of a leaf. Although, and I do say this a lot when I'm talking about animated adaptations, obviously the amount of detail you can put into an animated thing is very different to the detail you can put into, say, a stage costume or something that's going to be shown on an actor. When it is animated, you have to draw it over and over and over again. It has to be able to be copied and replicated, put into different positions and poses and moved all over the place. The more detail you add, the more time it takes and the more continuity you have to keep up with. So particularly back in the 1950s, in the early days of animation, I absolutely understand that it had to be very, very simple. So I'm going to try not to hold that against it, but I do still have to say that it is a quite simple costume, much like their Peter as well. All of that being said, it does appear like she's wearing a leaf. It doesn't seem to just be a green dress, particularly given the way that Disney parks have flavored their Tinkerbells. I do feel like it is supposed to be a leaf, and so I'll give them credit for that. I also absolutely love the floofy pom-pom things on the bottom of her shoes. They were never mentioned in the original source material, but that doesn't mean that she wouldn't necessarily have them. And the hair being up in a big fairy-like poof. Yeah, all of that. I think she looks like a fairy. She looks sassy. Unfortunately, what they did with her character wasn't great. But overall, I do think she is comparable to her written counterpart. Question 2, does she fit within the adaptation's world? This, I would have to say, is a yes, particularly the character of Peter Pan. Tinkerbell and Peter definitely go hand in hand. Their costumes have similar vibes. They both have those sort of leaf-like triangular shapes at the bottom of their outfits, so they definitely fit cohesively together. She certainly looks like a whimsical, magical fairy that comes from the world of the Neverland, and particularly with the character of Peter, I think she definitely fits. And the world of the Neverland definitely fits her as well. It has similar colours, it's very, very beautiful and sumptuous. So overall, I do think that she, aesthetically at least, fits into this world. Again, huge problem with what they did to her character, and in fact most of the characters in this, but we're just looking at aesthetics right now. I can do it. And question number 3, is it a well-designed costume? Is it interesting even in its own right? This one I'm in two minds on, because as I said, it's animated, it was in the 50s, they had to make it quite simple. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it is quite a simple costume. There are other costumes on this list, hell, even the first one we looked at from 1924, they just have more to them. So in that regard, it's not particularly interesting, but on the other hand, they give us those fun little poofs on the bottom of her shoes, and it does look like a cutout leaf, and what Disney have done with it in the parks later on, drawing from that and turning it into other versions and variations, that's very exciting, but arguing again against myself here, that is later Tinkerbell, not this particular Tinkerbell. We are talking about the 1950s Tinkerbell. I do absolutely adore those poofy little pom-poms on her shoes though. Absolutely love those. Unfortunately, and I will just mention this here, when talking about the Disney Peter Pan, particularly the character of Tinkerbell, there is always a sort of dark cloud that comes with it, because a lot of people decided to take it upon themselves to forget or not bother to educate themselves on the fact that Peter Pan is not a Disney creation. It came from a book and a stage play way before Disney got their grubby mitts on it and ruined it for all time, and Tinkerbell as a white blonde fairy is not her canonical original state. We do not know Tinkerbell's skin colour, and she is a fairy, So I would posture it's actually very unlikely that it was white. She can be anything, it doesn't matter. She also was not ever described as being blonde. Again, we don't know her hair colour, and I would argue it's very unlikely as a fairy, it was a natural colour. Personally, I imagine her to be anything from sort of pink-skinned to greeny blue or gold, anything like that, and to have crazy colourful hair. That's how I see Tinkerbell. And if there is anyone watching this who is stuck in the rut of, but she's blonde and white, you are the problem. Educate yourself and please get a hobby. All right, moving on to the next Tinkerbell. Now we're moving into the 80s and a movie that I've talked about before, which is the Russian Peter Pan movie, Peterpan. I am still quite rusty, but my Russian is improving every day, so I quite enjoy watching this one because I get to test out my learning. Anyway, so let's talk about that Tinkerbell costume. So sadly my Russian isn't good enough to delve really deep into trying to find the costume designer for this. I can't find them. The most I can get is the production designer, which is someone called Vladimir Yefimov, so that's as close as I can get. Sorry about that. So number one, how does this Tinkerbell compare to the original? Well, the biggest way that this is going to not look like the original is that most of these roles are being played by children, and at no point would I ever wish a child playing Tinkerbell to be wearing anything like what the original Tinkerbell will have worn. So, keeping that in mind, this outfit does not look a lot like the original Tinkerbell because thankfully it is covered and sparkly and beaded and flowy and a little bit like the 1924 Tinkerbell, lots of different layers and textures and different things. So not a lot like the original Tinkerbell, but in this instance, thank Apollo. Next question, number two, is how does it fit in the adaptation into the world itself? And I have to say, this one definitely fits as well. All the costumes of this are absolutely sumptuous and beautiful. I talked about the Peter Pan costume in my 120 years of Peter Pan costumes. I actually put this one into the unique Peter Pan costume section because I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's beaded and draped and feathery. It seems to take so much from the original stage designs while also going off on its own whimsy as well. And the Tinkerbell matches to a T. Much like the Disney one matched the Tinkerbell and the Peter, this one seems to have done the same thing. There is so much to both of their costumes that cross over. It absolutely feels like she fits in this world and she's a creature of it, not just a part of it. It is in her blood as well. And finally, question number three is it an interesting design even if it's nothing like the original? I think I like this one even better than the 1924 Tinkerbell, and for very similar reasons. I just think it's been executed even better. It's very sparkly, very glittery, very whimsical, very fae-like. It certainly feels like it could fit on a character like, maybe not Titania herself, but definitely one of her troupe, one of the fairies in something like A Midsummer Night's Dream. It feels very fae, very other, very unearthly, very otherworldly. It is definitely glittery and it's got lots of different layers to it as well. So while it is not completely like the original Tinkerbell, I am glad of that because it is a child who is wearing it. Sticking with the 1980s now, and now we have the Australian Peter Pan animated version. This one's interesting. Peter with an Australian accent. Can't say I mind it too much, but we're not here to talk about him right now. Today we're here to talk about Tinkerbell. Question number one, how does she compare to the original Tinkerbell? This Tinkerbell is quite similar to the Disney version, and considering it came after the Disney one, I wouldn't be surprised if they had tried to stick to it a little bit. She is blonde, and again, we don't know the canonical colour of Tinkerbell's hair, so technically that is neither right nor wrong. And in this one, instead of having a floof, which is how we are describing Tinkerbell's hair in the Disney one apparently, in this she has a ponytail instead, but it is blonde. She is also wearing a greeny dress. It is cut relatively low and it's got a sort of slit where her leg is and a sort of triangular, sort of leaf-shaped bit at the front as well. And then she has little pointy shoes, but sadly no pom-poms. In comparison to the original Tinkerbell description from the novel, I would have to say this one feels relatively accurate. It's not a completely skeletal leaf, but it does still look like a leaf shape. It seems to be cut quite low and relatively square. You also see quite a lot of her figure. It's cut quite low at the bottom as well. So overall, I would have to say it definitely feels quite Tinkerbell. Question number two, how does it fit within the world as a whole? Again, and I think we're going to keep seeing this, the Tinkerbell in this definitely matches the Peter Pan. His outfit is a little bit lackluster, but again, it's animated. I appreciate that it has to be relatively simple. They have some color matching, similar sort of shapes and designs to all of their outfits, and Tinkerbell again definitely fits within the world of the Neverland as well. So overall, I would have to say it definitely fits the world of the adaptation very, very well. And question number three, is it an interesting costume design? Well, unfortunately, I would have to say probably not, simply because, again, well, it is relatively simple, but again, I do give them some credit for this because it was animation and they couldn't go into as much sumptuous detail as you would want to. But with all that being said, I do think they could have possibly done a little bit more to it, made it look slightly more leaf-like, something like this. It does end up sort of looking like she's almost in just a swimming costume, which isn't the worst design in the world, but she deserves so much better. This is Tinkerbell after all. Sticking with the 80s once again, man, there were a lot of Peter Pan adaptations coming out in the 80s. Again, we're looking at an animated series. This is the Peter Pan animated series, and in this one, Tinkerbell has a very different look to the other Tinkerbells we've seen so far. Question number one then, how does she compare to the original? This Tinkerbell has short, spiky, sort of cropped reddish hair, and she's got big pink sort of petals sticking out all over her dress. In comparison to the original, it doesn't sound exactly like the leaf cut low and square, but it does still seem to be quite natural, looking a bit like a flower and petals, and of course she used flower blossom ideas for her bed and her bedroom as well, so that I can sort of see Tinkerbell doing. I also love the fact that she is not blonde in this one, hooray! And she does in fact have an interesting colour to her hair, and as a fellow Ginge, I applaud this one. Question number two, how does this Tinkerbell fit within the world of the adaptation? I would have to say, once again, and so far all the adaptations have been doing quite well on this one, she does seem to fit very, very well. There is less to connect her with Peter in this one though, interestingly. Peter doesn't have any touches of her colours on him, she doesn't seem to have any of his colours on her, they have very different hairstyles, and so she does look very, very different to him, but Peter and Tink matching has never been something that I find particularly necessary, and other than them both wearing different types of leaves, it doesn't seem like they are completely matchy-matchy anyway. I really love that this Tink seems to have a sort of punk-ish vibe to her. While she is wearing, you know, pink, there is also this almost Pink the Singer style of pixie cut hair to her, so absolutely loving that. She definitely fits within the world of the Neverland as well. She seems to fit absolutely perfectly there too. Question number three then, is it an interesting overall design? I would have to say yes. I definitely think that she looks fae-like and interesting. She definitely looks like a fairy. She has some sass to her. I love her hair, love the colours and how she looks almost like a flower in flight. Absolutely adore this Tinkerbell. Very different, but very, very cool. Let's move on then to the next. Finally moving out of the 80s now, and we are coming to the 1990s with Fox's animated series. Lots of animated Peter Pans going on between the 80s and 90s. And this is of course Peter Pan and the Pirates, with the immaculate Tim Curry voicing Captain Hook. And again, we have a red-haired pink Tink. I'm loving this vibe, can you tell? So, question number one then, how does this Tink compare to the original? Well, once again, we don't have a Tinkerbell that seems to be wearing a low-cut leaf, but again, it doesn't matter because she looks, well, like a flower. She looks very natural. The shades of sort of pink and lilac and almost creams we get in her outfit, they do really look like she has plucked the petals from flowers and then recreated it on herself. It absolutely looks beautiful and very, very natural. I love the fact that she has a hat as well, the sort of natural flower-like hat, absolutely adorable. And it does match, while not completely with the Tinkerbell low-cut leaf, it does match with the style and design for her bedchamber. So I do think we can give them some credit for that. Again, hair-wise, I love that it's a different colour. We're experimenting with that now. It's sort of wavy and fluffy. I love this look for Tinkerbell. It's a lot softer than the one we just talked about at the end of the 80s, but nonetheless, it does still feel very Tinkerbell. Question number two then, how does it fit within the world of the adaptation? Well, this is a fantastic adaptation and one of my favourite Neverlands. There is so much to it, it's so sumptuous, full of colour and full of life, and this Tinkerbell fits in absolutely beautifully. She has the wonderful look of nature about her, so she immediately fits in with the world of the Neverland, and as our main fairy, she stands out enough to look special, while also blending in with the rest of it to look like she belongs and is from there. Again though, much like we talked about with the last one in the 80s, this Tinkerbell and this Peter Pan don't have a great deal in common. Some of the sort of choppiness of their shapes of their costumes may be at a stretch, but ultimately they don't look anything like each other, and again, I really like this. I don't think that we need to have them being, as I said, matchy, 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 and I do like the fact that Tinkerbell sort of stands on her own in this. And question number three, is it an interesting enough outfit of its own right? Yes, absolutely it is. She, again, is looking like a flower, floral, fae-like fantasy. How many more F words can I get in there? Fairy. And I love the fact that she has a different colour to her hair as well. It really makes her stand out. She looks absolutely beautiful, poised, elegant, and put together, but also a little bit sassy too. She's got all those little layers going on. She definitely has an element of sass. All right then, let's move on to the next. Sticking with the 90s, and we are going into one of my least favourite Peter Pan adaptations of all time, the movie Hook. In case any of you are brand new to this channel and somehow came to this video without watching any of my others, I would just like to caveat that the only thing I dislike about the movie Hook is its plot. I think that every actor in it is doing a fantastic job. A lot of them look absolutely stunning. The sets are one of my favourite bits and the music is incredible. It is simply the script and the story they are doing that makes me incredibly uncomfortable and irritated depending on the day. But anyway, let's talk about that Tinkerbell costume. There are actually two for the price of one with this Tinkerbell, because we see the Tinkerbell in her regular outfit and then she gets that sparkly dress for about 2 minutes. So let's talk about both of them. I will talk about the sparkly dress first because it is quicker. Number one, how does it compare to the original Tinkerbell? It doesn't, really. A bit like the 1924 Tinkerbell, it's beautiful, but it's not cut particularly low and square. It's not a skeleton leaf. It's very, very sparkly. It's very, very pretty. But, well, I mean, if you want a sparkly, pretty, glittery dress that's sort of white and creamy coloured, go watch Labyrinth. It's never going to be as good as Sarah's dress from that, so moving on. Question number two, does it fit within the world of the adaptation? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, and I am trying to not let my bias against this movie stand in the way here, but genuinely, as a costume, it doesn't necessarily feel Neverlandy. Do you know what I mean? It feels like a big, beautiful ball gown, but that doesn't really seem to fit the Neverland that we are presented in the world of Hook. It's very gritty. Even Captain Hook himself, while having details beyond compare on his outfit, he still looks gritty and grounded. There isn't this fantasy ball element, and you could argue, well, she's a fairy, so she gets that, but her regular outfit, which we'll talk in a minute, has none of that to it. Again, you could say that she's dressing up for Mr. Banning, but I'm just not sure that that was the way to go with it. It's a very stunning dress, but it almost feels a little simple. And I'm not saying the process of making it will have been simple. As a costumer, absolutely not. But I do think that just a fairly generically shaped, glittery ball gown that you would probably see, well, on a character like Glinda, but even hers was more intricate than that. I suppose it feels a bit prom-like. And again, that might have been what they were going for, but ultimately, I don't think that particular dress really fits in the world of the Neverland that they're giving us here. Question number three then is it an interesting costume in its own right? Again, I'm torn because the costume maker side of me says it will have taken so much time to make. It looks beautiful, it's very intricate. And so on the one hand, yes, it's interesting, but on the other hand, for this particular character, no, it's not. It is just essentially a big puffy prom dress. I think she could have had better. But let's talk about her other outfit, the one that we see her in the most. Now, this one, in comparison to the original, I have to talk about in two different ways. Because number one, in comparison to the book, it's not cut particularly low and square. It does have leaves on it, or at least leaf shape, so I'll give it that. But it doesn't seem to be quite so much, I'm a fun, sassy fairy, look at me, embonpoint and all this. It does feel more sort of like, well, it's not quite giving potato sack, but it's not giving potato sack. I don't think it's completely what Sassy Belle would want to be wearing. Her name is now Sassy Belle, why not? So, in comparison to the original, no. However, in comparison to the original stage play, particularly because we have been comparing the Tinkerbells to the Peter Pans, this is interesting because the original stage costumes for Peter had him in different shades of burnt orange and red, and that is a similar colour to what she is wearing in this. In fact, the cut of the tunic and the style of the shorts, the style of the whole costume actually does seem to be at least a little inspired by possibly the original Peter Pans on the stage. Think of characters like Nina and Jean Forbes Robertson, and hell, I'll put up pictures of their costumes and the one replica that I made as well. It might be giving them too much credit to assume that these filmmakers, well, no, it was the costume designers, and the costume designers I have actually spoken to have always gone to painstaking efforts to at least research. Even if what they've ended up creating hasn't been something that I personally find very enjoyable, they still nonetheless poured a lot of themselves and research into making it. So maybe the script writers didn't bother looking at the original stuff, but I would have to guess that the costume designers, at least for Tinkerbell, had a glance at the original Peter Pans from the stage, because Otherwise, they have accidentally stumbled into making a Tinkerbell that looks quite similar to the Peter. Now, this doesn't help in terms of Tinkerbell because, as we've said before, Tinkerbell does not need to match Peter and isn't described as doing so, with the exception of the fact that they both wear leaves. So they do and don't get bonus points for that, but ultimately she doesn't completely at all look like the original Tinkerbell. So moving on to question number 2. Does this Tinkerbell outfit fit within the world of the Neverland? Yes, I would have to say in this adaptation, the version of the Neverland that they give us, and again, the sets are stunning, I do think that this Tinkerbell outfit does seem to fit. It also has a very similar design and style to the outfit they give Mr. Banning to wear towards the end of the movie. No, I'm not calling him Peter Pan because he is not. And those two having that sort of cohesiveness to them, again, it does seem to fit and track within the world of this Neverland, particularly because this Tinkerbell is very, very obsessed with Mr. Banning. I also think that the colour palette they chose for her, while being a little bit not quite bright enough for me or bold enough, it does still seem to fit because, again, this world is relatively realistic and gritty, and arguably the most colourful character within it is Rufio, despite him wearing quite a lot of black. So I do think that she fits the world that she is in, this version of that world anyway. And question number 3, is it an interesting costume in its own right? Once again, I find myself torn, because on the one hand, no, it's kind of simple, it's all one note, very one colour, very potato sacky, not very interesting. They do have a few little details here and there, but overall, it does all sort of blend together, and until you look closely, you can't even tell, much like I talked about with the Mr. Banning outfit, you really can't tell about all the details, and what's the point of them being there if you can't see them, particularly as it's on a film, it's going to be filmed up close, you should be able to see them, and you just can't. But on the other hand, I do have to give them some props, I hope, because they have gone back to the original stage designs and it does look a lot like the original Peter stage designs. But again, this is Tinkerbell, not Peter, so moving on to the next. Now we're moving into the 2000s with the 2003 live-action Peter Pan film. This is the one with Jason Isaacs in it as Captain Hook. A lot of you remember this one. This Tinkerbell was played by Ludwig Zagner, and I am so sorry if I have butchered that name. And let's just get straight into question number 1 then. How does this Tinkerbell compare to the original? Overall, I would have to say this one is done pretty darn well. It is very obviously leaves, several of them. It is cut relatively low. It's got lots of interesting detail to it. Tinkerbell is sparkly and vibrant. I absolutely feel like this matches the Tinkerbell we get described in the novel. Question number 2, does this Tinkerbell fit within the world of the adaptation? Again, absolutely yes. And again, we have Tinkerbell playing a little bit of the matching game with Peter. And again, while not being necessary, it is still noticeable, and that is quite fun. This Peter Pan is wearing a lot of very natural leaves and vines, and this Tinkerbell is very, very similar. It almost looks as if part of their outfits were plucked from the same tree, and I can absolutely imagine Tinkerbell deliberately taking leaves to match Peter at a certain point. She has a lot of wildness to her. Her hair isn't perfect all the time, which I absolutely love. She has so much sassiness to her. You can see it in just the costume design, if nothing else, and she certainly fits within the world of the Neverland. Her leaves matching not just Peter, but the world around her as well, the different shades and the vibrancies, the sparkle and the almost glittering gold and silver we get there as well. Absolutely stunning. Love it. She certainly fits within the world. And question number 3, is it an interesting costume in its own right? Again, absolutely yes. There is so much to it. I sort of want to 360 rotate it and just look round and around and around at it. Every time you look, there's more details and more to see. The leaves, they stick out in different directions. They're sitting in different places. It's absolutely gorgeous. Definitely feels fairy, not just any fairy. It certainly feels very Tinkerbell. All right, let's move on to the next. Next up, we have the 2011 mini-series Neverland. And this Tinkerbell takes a completely different turn to the other ones we've talked about so far. So, first up, number 1, how does she look in comparison to the original Tinkerbell description? I think that I would say that she matches quite well, but it is a little difficult to tell because the outfit that she's wearing is all glistening silver, including her skin and her hair, so it's quite difficult to tell what bits of her are details, which bits could be leaves, but overall it seems to be cut a bit like a leaf, so I would have to say it's never described what colour the original leaf is, it's just the shape and the design, so I'd go with a strong maybe for matching the original Tink. The overall look is essentially head to toe silver body paint and a lot of sparkles. I like that it sort of has a bit of texture to it and almost looks like net in certain places. That's very interesting. So a firm maybe for comparison to the original Tinkerbell, possibly leaning towards maybe yay. Question number 2 is, how does this Tinkerbell fit within the world that they have created? Well, this one's a little bit difficult because this Neverland is not quite as vibrant and exciting as I would want. whereas this Tinkerbell almost feels the opposite, being silver and fey-like and glistening. She feels like she stepped out of another world entirely and is almost being muted to fit with this series. I have not done a video essay about this series yet. I probably need to. Overall, I just think that it's a little bit lacking in creative imagination, could you say? It's a little bit grayscale, which means that Tinkerbell, instead of being a sort of vibrant silver that she obviously is, she's a little dulled down. So I would have to say I don't think she fits within the world particularly well because she is too exciting for it. I think she deserves a better one. The world should be elevated to her level rather than dulling her down to match it. Question number 3 then, is this costume interesting in its own right? Absolutely yes. Finally, I love that finally we have a Tinkerbell who is not just a human in a dress. While they all look lovely, this Tinkerbell is so definitely not a human in a costume. This is 1000% a fairy from another world. She has silver skin. She looks so strange and beautiful and different. I absolutely love this vibe for her. I just wish she was in a better series. So I would definitely take a lot of this and put it into something else. But overall, as a costume design, the color is interesting. I kind of wish they'd added more to it, but again, it has been dulled down a little bit. So I feel like in person, this was probably a lot more poppy. I would have some gold and some silver in there too, maybe even some rose gold to add some different detailing to it. But overall, I do still think it looks absolutely stunning. Next up, we're back in the animated Peter Pans, and this time we're talking about the adventures of Peter Pan, or the new adventures of Peter Pan. And this one is animated, it's more sort of 3D styled, and the Tinkerbell in this is very, very interesting. So, question number 1, how does she compare to the original? Well, this Tinkerbell has a bob of dark hair, and again, we don't know her canonical hair color, so that's absolutely fine. I also just love the fact that she's not blonde once again. We also have her in a long, leafy dress, so that definitely is a comparison to the original. It seems to be cut relatively low and square, definitely lots of leaves in it. I adore the fact that it has a sort of train going off the back as well. So, overall, I'd have to say, in comparison to the original Tinkerbell, yeah, I would definitely give it a pass. It definitely seems to have at least drawn on the original designs for her. Question number 2, how does this Tinkerbell fit within this world, this adaptation's world of the Neverland? I would have to say incredibly well. This is a show that, in comparison to the last one we talked about, has amazing color. It is popping everywhere all of the time. In fact, the most boring it gets is when it comes to the mortal world. And when we go back to the Neverland, the colors pop and are vibrant again. Again, we play the sort of matchy-matchy game with Tinkerbell and Peter Pan. While the Tinkerbell outfit is very, very different to Peter's, there are still the same sort of style of leaves, particularly the edging on the leaves, that match them together. And I do really like that because it means that they look like they're from the same place, possibly taking things from the same trees, that kind of thing, while not looking like carbon copies of each other. The Tinkerbell in this, I love just how many details there are on her outfit. I love all the different leaf placements, and again, that trail down the back. It's not just a short dress, it's sort of short at the front. It's a mullet dress, if you will. Short at the front and party in the back. So she's got this big long train of leaves. I love that. I also really adore the fact that she has ties around her ankles, sort of leafy vines instead of shoes. Absolutely love that. So definitely she seems to fit within the vibrant, colourful, whimsical world of this Neverland. And question number 3, does the costume stand in its own right? Is it interesting? Absolutely yes. Again, love that train on the back. I love the fact that they've played with the asymmetrical detail of that. Love all the different layers of leaves going around. Love that she's not just blonde. And I also love the fact that instead of wearing shoes, she has those flowery vines around her ankles. A beautiful twist. Absolutely adore this outfit. Let's move on then to the next. And now we move into another adaptation that I'm not particularly keen on, again because of the scripting. And this is the Royal Shakespeare Company's Wendy and Peter Pan. Question number 1, how does this Tinkerbell compare to her original description? She doesn't. It's an interesting outfit, we'll talk about that in a minute, but there is nothing particularly leaf-like about it. It isn't low and square, it doesn't feel anything like the Tinkerbell that's described to us in the novel. I think if you read that description and saw this picture, you wouldn't necessarily correlate the two at all. Alright, question number 2, how does this costume fit within the world of the Neverland that they have established? Well, much like the quite disappointing Peter Pan costume that I talked about with this, I do think it fits. Within the world that they have created, absolutely. This Tinkerbell certainly fits that. It's going for a sort of darker, grimmer, almost realistic, but with a little bit of fantasy vibe, and this Tinkerbell certainly fits that. I do remember when I first saw it, I felt that she looked almost a little bit like a milkmaid dress sort of like a mumsy kind of character. She almost felt like Mrs. Weasley going to milk a cow, if that makes sense. And that's not insulting, I don't mean it like that. I just mean, instead of looking like a whimsical fairy, she looked like, you know, Mrs. Weasley going to milk a cow. The feathered wings are interesting. They almost sort of resemble a dragon. I was left thinking of sort of dragon from Shrek. I do like the big fancy floofy bow. I do like the fact that she's got fluffy hair. That's very cool. Overall, the outfit definitely fits within the world that they have created. It just doesn't completely feel very fairy-like to me, but it definitely fits within the world that they're playing with. Question number 3 then, does the outfit stand in its own right? Yes and no. Why am I so split with these all the time? On the side of no, it really isn't very Tinkerbell, and that is ultimately what we are judging here. It just does not scream Tinkerbell at all. In fact, if you took away the wings, it doesn't even scream fairy, and even with the wings, it doesn't really scream fairy at all. On the other hand, yes, it being a costume that stands in its own right, we almost have to ignore the fact that it's a Tinkerbell costume, but as a design, again, ignoring who it's for, I do quite like it as a design. I love the boots, obsessed with those. I do like that it's got a fair few attentions to details. I love the different layering choices that are going on. The makeup is very interesting. I've said the hair, I love the floofy hair and everything. It's just a shame that it really doesn't read as very Tinkerbell outside of the context that it is in. So within the context, when she appears and she's called Tinkerbell, she reads as Tinkerbell. But if you put her in a lineup with all the other Tinkerbells, I just think it might look like, why is this random character there? All right, next. Oh, thank the Lord we can talk about Paloma Faith now. In the late 2000s, we had a movie in the UK on a channel called ITV that was called Peter and Wendy, and this starred Paloma Faith as Tinkerbell. Question number 1, how does she compare to her original counterpart? Well, this Tinkerbell is wearing a sort of leather biker jacket. She has big poofy pom-poms in her hair. She has fantastic face full of makeup. She's also wearing a sort of mini skirty dress with a long sort of sheer train going off the back and fun shoes. So, no, she doesn't look particularly like her original counterpart at all. But I guess the vibe is pretty much there. It does feel like a very sassy outfit. We'll talk more about that in the next bit though. So question number 2, does she fit within the world that this Peter Pan is set in? I would have to say yes. One of the biggest compliments I pay to this movie in particular is that when combining the world of the real world and the story of the Neverland, they combine the two rather than separating them. So for example, when Peter and Wendy are on Maruna's Rock, it's not just a rock set in the water, it's actually got hospital beds as well. They both bleed into and out of each other, particularly because the character of Wendy in this is having a dream a lot of the time as she's going in for surgery. Really, really beautiful film, highly recommend seeing this. And in terms of blending the modern world, the reality world, with the world of the Neverland, I think that Paloma Faith's Tinkerbell costume absolutely encompasses this. It definitely fits within this world. So, to explain, the character of Wendy was watching a music video of Paloma Faith, and then when she started imagining and dreaming and / hallucinating of the Neverland, Paloma Faith became her Tinkerbell. And she is in a completely different outfit. She has the fairy wings, she flies around, she is Tinkerbell, but it's not quite a fantasy outfit. She is in the leather jacket, the fancy pom-poms. It's a fairly modern day-ish outfit, but it does still look fairy-like and whimsical. It looks very sassy and badass, a bit like that Tinkerbell with the sort of punk rock pixie shortcut and those flashy pink petals. This Tinkerbell has a similar vibe, definitely leaning into her sassy side. So particularly with those big floofy pom-poms in her hair as opposed to on her feet like Disney, that makes it feel slightly otherworld-ish. It's not just someone's outfit that they would walk out of Topshop in and down the high street. If you took the massive pom-poms out, took away the wings, maybe, but it would still look a little bit dolled up for the regular world. So it definitely feels like a, if not exquisite, it's definitely an interesting outfit, and it definitely fits within the world that they are creating, because even the character of Peter Pan in this doesn't have a completely fae-like outfit. So while not being my favourite, because I really like to lean into the full fantasy, it definitely fits within the world they've created. And question number 3 then, does this outfit stand of its own accord? Unfortunately, probably not, especially if you take away those big massive pom-poms. It really doesn't necessarily read as Tinkerbell. It does sort of just read like a modern outfit that you slap some fairy wings on. I think a lot of effort went into it. I think that it fits completely to the vibes in the world that they've created, but unfortunately it doesn't look very much like a Tinkerbell if you take it out of context. Next up, we have Peter Pan Goes Wrong. Now, this has had a few different adaptations over the years, but I'm primarily going to be talking about the one that was filmed for the BBC, the one that is available online on Amazon Prime, sometimes on YouTube. Most of the clips you will have seen are from this filmed version of the show. This version of Tinkerbell is actually one of the characters played by a character called Annie, who is a character that someone plays. They play the role of Annie, who is playing the role of Mrs. Darling, Tinkerbell, Tiger Lily, a pirate. It's Peter Pan Goes Wrong. Please watch it, it's amazing. But we are going to just focus on the Tinkerbell costume for this. So, question number 1. How does it compare to the Tinkerbell of the original lore? Well, I think it compares pretty well. It's not necessarily a leaf that she is wearing. It does have the leaf-like shapes. It is definitely cut quite low and square. The bottom is very tutu-like, very fairy-like, and it literally lights up. So I have to give them major props for that. It doesn't look completely like a leaf, but the overall aesthetic in the design I absolutely love, and she is incredibly glittery. So I would have to say fairly true to the original, and I definitely think I could see the original Tinkerbell wearing at least a version of this outfit. Also, fun fact, I spoke to the wonderful costume designer of this show. It was a fantastic interview. A video of that is up. I will put it somewhere here while I was talking about a big deep dive of the Peter Pan Goes Wrong series. So go check that out. Wonderful, wonderful behind the scenes chat going on there. All right, so question number 2. How does this Tinkerbell fit within the world of this adaptation? Incredibly well, I have to say. So this adaptation is a little tricky because it's not actually telling the story of Peter Pan, it's telling the story of a group of actors who are trying to portray the story of Peter Pan and what happens to them as it all goes horribly wrong, hence the name Peter Pan Goes Wrong. So when judging this Tinkerbell, I'm not judging her under the same criteria as all the rest because she is not being Tinkerbell, she is being Annie in the world of Peter Pan going horribly, horribly wrong. She does definitely fit within that world. So you've got the Drama Society who are putting on this show. All their costumes are absolutely wonderful. Hers definitely fits. They're all very sumptuous, lots of attention to detail paid. She has fairy lights around her, and there's a gag at one point where she accidentally drags the stagehand onto stage with her because they're attached on a big long string to keep them electric and turned on, and there's a moment later where that goes horribly wrong, but no spoilers. Overall, her outfit definitely fits within the world, and fun fact, they had to fit most of this outfit underneath her Mrs. Darling outfit so she could do a quick change into Tinkerbell, so absolutely fantastic design, and it definitely fits within the world. It's vibrant and colourful, very, very bold. Every character has seemingly their own sort of colour. So Hook has red, Peter has green, Tinkerbell has blue, Wendy has sort of whitey cream, Michael has pink, that kind of thing. And this Tinkerbell being in blue, I absolutely adore, and it definitely fits within the world, and she stands out while also clearly being a part of it. Not just the Neverland that they are creating and putting on, but the Drama Society world as well. Question number 3, does this costume stand up of its own accord? Absolutely yes. I love, again, the crazy hair they've got with her. I love the gags they have with the different lights lighting up her outfit. I love how sparkly and beautiful it is. I love all the different layers. I love how absolutely sumptuous and stunning it is. You've got this sort of leaf-like shapes while not just being a leaf wraparound dress. It looks completely different to Disney, and I think that was very, very brave because a lot of the time when people think of this story, unfortunately, they immediately go to Disney. And so the fact that this Tinkerbell is number 1, not in green, and number 2, not blonde, and number 3, not in an outfit that looks anything like the Disney version, I absolutely applaud. All right, what is next? Now we move on to the Once Upon a Time Tinkerbell. Question number 1. How does this Tinkerbell compare to the original? My answer, given how I feel about Once Upon a Time, may surprise you. I think that overall this Tinkerbell is pretty good in comparison to the original description. While she's not wearing one leaf, she is wearing leaves. It's not cut square, it's cut round, but it's still cut quite low. It's cut at the bottom to look like leaves and that sort of shaggy effect. It's really pretty. It's really beautiful. It feels very natural. It feels like it's got a glistening, glittery quality to it. You can definitely see all the different colors and textures and tones going through it. Unfortunately, the Peter Pan costume didn't, as I described when I was talking about the Peter Pan in Once Upon a Time. It has loads of different details and loads of different shades and colours, but you just can't see them. With Tinkerbell, however, you can. I don't know if it's because she's better lit most of the time or because she's a fairy so she glows most of the time. Whatever it is, every single time you see her on screen, you can see bits and pieces of her detailing. It's absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, she is yet another blonde, but overall, the outfit itself really feels like the original Tinkerbell. I can definitely imagine her in something like this. Let's move on then to question number 2. How does this Tinkerbell fit within the world that they have created? Well, this one's an interesting one really, because there's almost 2 worlds, and there's the Tinkerbell outside, but I'm not going to judge that because that's not Tinkerbell. So yeah, so ignoring the outside bit, so the bit that is in the world that they've created, God, this show is a mess. Yes and no. I think that, a bit like I said for the silver Tinkerbell, this Tinkerbell almost feels too good. Her aesthetic, at least. Plotline, we ignore. Aesthetically, this Tinkerbell feels too good for this series. I think she deserves much better, particularly the Peter Pan costume. It had so much detailing to it, but it didn't show up on camera. She deserves to be surrounded by as much elevation as she has. She has so much sparkle and colour to her. She absolutely deserves better. So overall, I would say no, I don't think she fits within the world because the world isn't good enough. Alright, moving on to question number 3 then. Does this Tinkerbell costume stand out in its own right? Absolutely yes, I would say that it does. Number 1, it definitely feels very Tinkerbell. If you put it in a lineup and you looked next to all the other Tinkerbells, particularly judging by the original description of her, I think she would fit absolutely beautifully. And even ignoring the Tinkerbell part of it, it's just a stunning costume. It's intricate, it's beautiful, it's natural, but also covered in this glitter and sparkle and glitz. It feels elegant and also a little bit sassy as well, a little bit cheeky. Absolutely adore this Tinkerbell, which I don't think any of us were expecting, given how I feel about the story that they created in Once Upon a Time. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. And now we're coming up to 2023 with the Disney live-action remake of Peter Pan. Alright, let's talk about it. Question number 1, how does this Tinkerbell compare to the original description? I think that the top half of this costume is actually fairly accurate to the original Tinkerbell. It's cut really beautifully, it definitely seems to be made of a sort of moss and leaves, that kind of thing, very glittery, very magic, very fairy. I love that her hair is not, again, blonde! I love that it's beautiful and interesting and messy and different. The bottom half of this outfit is where it sort of starts to lose me because the top part of the sort of corset thing is beautiful, very natural, looks very leafy, and then it just sort of goes into a floofy skirt, again giving a sort of prom vibe. It's not terrible, it's just, I think it could have been elevated a lot more. It deserves a lot better. That top deserves a better bottom to go with it. So the top half definitely feels very Tinkerbell. The bottom lets it down a little bit though. Question number 2 then, how does this Tinkerbell fit within the world that they have created? And by world, we use that word very sparingly. So other than the scripting, this movie's biggest problem is saturation. It just looks grey and boring and dull, and considering you have such a magical world like the Neverland, the fact that they managed to make it look so beyond dull and almost grayscale at points is absolutely beyond me. I don't understand why they did that. And unfortunately, Tinkerbell does suffer from this a little bit too. However, I would argue that this Tinkerbell, particularly the top half of this outfit, is better than the movie it finds itself in. A lot of the costume designs for this are very, very beautiful. I really enjoy the Peter outfit. I really enjoy Wendy's outfit. Unfortunately, the fact that they are in such a grayscaled, unsaturated film, it just means you lose all those beautiful details. And we do lose it with Tinkerbell as well, but at least in the top half, you can definitely tell there is something there, particularly because it is sort of glistening like she is the fairy that she is. So ultimately, I'd have to say it does sort of fit, but also this Tinkerbell definitely deserves better than the film it's in. Question number 3 then, how does this Tinkerbell stand on its own 2 feet as an interesting costume design? Well, again, the top half I think really could stand on its own. I think you could put the top half onto the Tinkerbell from the 2003 film, you could put it onto the Tinkerbell from Once Upon a Time, and it would fit, it would look beautiful. You might have to tweak some of the colours around to match, but the design, it was absolutely beautiful, and it would definitely fit with those, and the original description of Tinkerbell too. The bottom half, again, it just feels a little lackluster, like they focused so much on making the top half pretty that the bottom half just sort of got left a little bit. I suppose it might be edited with CGI while they're making her fly around like a fairy too, so there could be that. The top half can't save it, the rest of it needs to be just as beautiful. I think it could have had a lot more details, it could have been a lot more beautiful and interesting, they could have kept those leaves all the way through really strongly. So I think it stands enough on its own, but in comparison to the rest of them on this list, nowhere near enough. This time we have the 2024 London Palladium pantomime of Peter Pan with the immaculate Rob Madge playing the role of Tinkerbell. Question 1 then, how does this Tinkerbell compare to her original counterparts? Well, she's definitely not wearing leaves, it's definitely not cut low and square. But I do think the original Tinkerbell would have really loved the fluffy sort of bolero over the shoulders thing, possibly the boots and maybe the stripy socks as well. But ultimately, it's not a leaf, it's not cut low and square, it doesn't look at all like how I would have imagined Tinkerbell based on her original description. It is still fun though, so let's move on to question number 2. Number 2, how does this Tinkerbell fit within the world that they have created? Absolutely stunningly. Now this is a pantomime that pulls out all the stops. If you've ever been to the London Palladium, I mean, just Google it and you will see the costumes here. There is a fantastic team of developers and designers here, and Julian Clary is in it. Need I say more? In fact, I think Julian Clary has his own team of designers who design all of the costumes because that takes a long time. Almost every time Julian Clary walks onto the stage, a different costume is being worn. It's incredible. Now, the Tinkerbell in this absolutely fits that vibe. It is fun, silly, whimsical, full British panto. Everything is just bigger and brasher and sillier and more vibrant and insane, and it absolutely matches that world completely. This Tinkerbell has nothing to do with the Peter Pan. Those two outfits look incredibly different. I talked about this Peter Pan in my 100 Years of Peter Pan costume series as well, and this Tinkerbell is all in beautiful shades of pinks and blues and whites and glitter and glitter and glitter. And a wonderful hat as well for this Tinkerbell. So absolutely, definitely fits within the world of this pantomime, and I have no more notes. Let's move on to question number 3. Question number 3, does this Tinkerbell costume stand in its own right? Again, I'm torn, because on the one hand, absolutely yes. This is a beautiful design. This costume is, every time you look at it, there's more to look at. There is so much whimsy and different textures and colours and patterns, and there is just so much. It's absolutely stunning. However, we are talking about Tinkerbell costumes, and the fact is, if you stood this costume up by itself with none of the context around it and asked people to guess what character it was for, I do not think that you would guess Tinkerbell within your first 5 guesses, unfortunately. It is a wonderful production, a fantastically played part by Rob Madge, but the costume is just not quite Tinkerbell enough for this lore enthusiast. I am so sorry, it hurts me more than it hurts you. Fantastic production, fantastic costume, just doesn't read completely Tinkerbell out of context. Alright, let's move on to the next. Unfortunately, this is the last one for now in this Tinkerbell series, and believe me, I really wish it wasn't, because we are leaving on not a high note. You've already seen my review of this film, you already know what I think about it, you have watched my painstaking bullet points over on TikTok or here on the YouTube as well. It is, of course, the 2025 horror reimagining Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. Let's just do this quickly, shall we? Question number 1, how does the Tink compare to the original? She doesn't! She doesn't compare. She is nothing like her. Number 1, she's not even a fairy. She doesn't even have wings. Number 2, she's blonde, again. Number 3, she is not wearing leaves. She's wearing a gritty nightie, and no. Moving on, question number 2. Does this Tinkerbell fit within the story and the world that they have created? Minimal as it is. Minimal effort all round went into this production, and unfortunately, yes, it fits within that world perfectly well because it is minimal effort, no attention paid, and dark and grisly, but without any imagination being put into it whatsoever. Question number 3. Does this Tinkerbell outfit stand on its own accord? No. No, it does not. It's going right at the bottom. If you looked at this out of context, you would have absolutely no idea it's Tinkerbell. Even in context, you have no idea it's Tinkerbell. They have to tell us. They have to literally say the character's name of Tink before you even start to go, oh, is that who it is? The whole thing is silly. I'm not getting into this again. It's very disappointing. They could have done so much more with the lore. If you want to go dark, there is so much there already. Anyway, we're talking about Tinkerbell costumes. I want to leave this on a positive note. The movie's over and it's never coming back. That's a positive note. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. And what other characters would you like to see me track the costume history of? I am definitely going to be doing Captain Hook. I am definitely going to be doing Wendy. Almost certainly the Lost Boys as well. And I might do a completely separate video where I talk about the Disney parks costumes. But also, Disney Dan has done a really good deep dive into those costumes, so I sort of feel like that'd be redundant from me, but I could do it if you'd like me to. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. As ever, thank you for supporting and engaging with my content, and if you would like to support us over on TikTok, please jump on over there as well. Yes, we have a Ko-fi. I think it's still up at the moment, but I'm not really doing very much with it yet, so bear with me. Eventually something will happen. Thank you for your love and support. Don't forget to hydrate, and I will see you very, very soon.